Hi everyone, welcome to Draftscapes. I'm Chris Tuccio. In this video, I'm going to cover sketching of ornamental trees, whether it's for landscape design or just for the fun of sketching. I'm going to show you a simple technique that you can use to draw a variety of different trees for a number of different purposes. Stick around. Hi everyone, as you know, in this channel many of my videos cover landscape design drafting. So that's typically plan views of designs that either you've already done or that you're working on for a client for the purposes of a portfolio or to get things ready for installation. So when you're doing those types of plan drawings, you're looking at an aerial view of the site. But for a lot of people, seeing a perspective or a sketch in a three-dimensional way can actually be very valuable for showing your clients what it's really going to look like when it's done. So sketching is really valuable to practice for a variety of different reasons. First, sketching really helps you see the world a little differently. A lot of times when people are taking a look at a garden or they're sort of stunned by the beauty of a plant, they'll typically reach for their phone and they'll take a picture, or their camera, and they'll take a picture of it. That sort of instantaneous capturing of a moment. Sketching slows things down. The slowing down of sketching allows you to see the landscape a little more clearly or just differently than you did before. If I was to look at a tree or a really nice flower that I liked and I just took a picture of it, that would be it. It would just be an instantaneous moment. Where if I took the time to actually sketch something, I'm going to actually appreciate the shape and form that made that tree or flower. So by sketching, it takes the time to actually see the world differently. And for a designer, it can be very valuable. The second reason to sketch is really to practice on your sort of muscle-hand-brain connection. So in the biomechanics video on body mechanics of drafting, which I'll make sure to link below, I talk a lot about muscle memory and making sure you have the proper neural connection to your mind of what you're thinking about and your hand, which is what you're actually making the lines with. So make sure you look at that. And sketching actually helps with this. Sketching over time and with practice will help in making that neural connection of your mind to your hand for the purposes of design. And then lastly, sketching's just fun. Doing it anywhere, you can take it on the go with you with a sketchbook, you can do it in a studio environment, you can doodle on a napkin in a restaurant. But sketching is just fun, and getting into the hobby of it can really create sort of a sustainable love for landscape architecture and landscape design that really sustains you during the slog that can be your profession sometimes, where you're just drafting out plan after plan after plan for the purposes of your clients. Where sketching can be a very personal thing that you do in your spare time as a hobby that makes you really love what you do. So without further ado, what we're going to do is I'm going to gather my materials, we're going to throw it up in the air, and we're going to start on how to actually sketch three-dimensionally some ornamental trees. Okay, so for today's lesson, I'm set up here on my drafting board with some regular bond paper, but you could feel free to use whatever you want. Again, a sketchbook, printed paper, even lined paper, grid paper, whatever you want to use, whatever you feel comfortable with. This isn't standard landscape drafting. This is just sketching for the fun of it and learning how to practice drawing these kinds of typical trees. And what I'm doing is I'm going to be using my drafting pen, my little Copic multiliner. It's something I used all the time for a number of different things, and you can again feel free to use pen, pencil, whatever you feel comfortable with. Experiment. It's all about trying to have fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and draw a number of different trees in what's called contour style. So what contour style is imagine if I was to draw my hand, rather than draw all the intricacies in the middle of it, I'm just going to draw the contours that are on the outside. And by doing the outside of my hand or drawing the edges of my hand, I'm going to get a realistic representation of what my hand's form is. And that's what we're going to start with in drawing trees. By doing a contour style sketch, it'll allow us to have more comfort in drawing trees in their natural form and then adding detail later. Now, another thing that is often stated is should I draw trees that are from pictures, or should I draw them from memory, or should I just draw them from my imagination? And I would say do both. You know, you'll find that some people, if they draw from a picture, they're going to get too captivated into the intricacies of the picture itself and not in the overall form of the tree, and vice versa. If you use your imagination only versus a picture, you might draw something that's very beautiful, but it doesn't actually represent a tree per se, or a specific type of tree for your landscape purposes. So today we're just going to draw from scratch, but I will link some pictures over time as we do more of these videos, so you can get an idea of how you might sketch from a picture as well. So no more talking, let's get to actually drawing. So we're going to start just with a normal trunk. So we'll have a trunk come up and flare up like this, and we're all about asymmetry with plants. So we're going to make sure that we have some sides that are larger than others and longer than others or wider than others. And when I get to a particular level of the trunk, I'm going to have it split and make these little Y shapes. Okay, and I'm going to draw the trunk first. Okay, so for most of these contour style trees, I'm going to draw the trunk first, and then I'll add the canopy in later. And again, this is just a normal style, typical ornamental deciduous shade tree. It's just not a specimen, it's not a conifer, it's just a normal deciduous tree. Okay, and as I go up and I add more of these little branches, I'm going to make sure that my lines are getting narrower. So as I start from the bottom and work my way up, I'm going to make sure that my lines are getting narrower. So the trunk is going to be the widest, and then the top of the tree is going to be the narrowest. Okay, and I think that looks okay for now. Okay, so then you're going to come back in and you're going to add the canopy texture itself. So for the canopy texture, what I like to tell students is imagine again a crinkled piece of paper. So if I was to take my bond paper or take another piece of paper, crinkle it up and put it on in front of me, I'm going to have those edges, those little sharp edges that come in and out to form the edge of that canopy. And so that's the texture that I'm going for. And I'm going to do that in all the pockets of branches that I have. Okay, now I don't have to do them so it's just one particular thing, but I want to make sure that I'm covering all the loose ends of the branching structure that I left out. So I'm going to do it here. And I'm also going to do it on the bottom here. And then the tops as well. And as you get more comfortable, you'll notice that you do this faster or slower. You know, I've been drawing this way or sketching this way for quite some time, so I draw it pretty quickly. But you may take some time to start, but don't rush. Don't take too much time. You want it to flow naturally naturally. So don't get tense while you're doing it. Okay, and here I'm just going to overlap it a little, so that it looks like this. Okay, so we have just a standard little ornamental tree, okay, that sort of came out, and then I'll just add like maybe a little root flare, some texturing on the bottom, and I have my first tree. So I drew my first simple tree in my landscape design. And I'm actually going to come in just to touch it up a little. I'm going to add a little thing to add that little branch so it's a little lighter of a tree. Okay? And now you can take that same technique, and I'm just going to move over just a little bit, and I'm going to do it where it's sort of a multi-stemmed tree. So it's going to have more of a flare out. So this is just a standard regular ornamental tree. This one with a single trunk here, I'm going to do a multi-stemmed tree. So it's going to come out and it's going to branch very quickly from the base, almost like it's suckering. Like so. Yeah, I'll make sure on the video that you could see that well. And for these types of branches, I'm thinking much more sort of aerodynamically. They're flaring out a little more, if that makes a little more sense. Okay, and so from there, again, I'm going to add my texture of my canopy. So this might be good for like a multi-stemmed river birch or something of that nature. This is or maybe a multi-stemmed dogwood. Whereas the first version we did might be good just for a standalone maple or maybe even a cercis that you can color in red or pink to indicate that it's flowering. This would be a much different type of tree. But again, the contour style, I'm just drawing the edges of the canopy. I'm not going too far in here. But it's adding just enough detail where I get a sense of what that tree is. You can see I'm going to try and move my hand away every now and then so you can see what I'm doing. And again, there's really nothing better than just taking some time and drawing out a tree and just sketching and thinking of ideas while you do so. You know, putting on some music in your studio, you know, grabbing a cup of coffee and just trying to draw out ideas in three-dimensional form. Sketching really allows you, and it has allowed me over time, to really develop a personal love for landscape design. Something that's a little different than what you'd get in an office or at a normal design studio. Okay, and so we have just a normal multi-stem tree. Now, the question often comes, do I texture it in some way? You know, do I need to come in and add some level of detail? And you absolutely can. So I'm going to just grab a thinner line weight here. This is my 0.5. And there's a few things that you can do. So the first thing you can do is you can add just some texture of the bark itself. So if I was on my first one here, I'm just going to add striations to the trunk and to the branches. I'm just going to be drawing lines in the direction that they're going, so up and downwards. So I'm just drawing some lines here just to add some texture. I don't have to do this, but it just adds a little more detail, which I didn't have before. I'm adding a little sort of circles as well every now and then, just for the knots that you sometimes see in the tree, just to add a little more detail. So you can do something like that. And again, the nice thing about that is you add a little more contrast to the tree, so the canopy itself remains more white, and then the trunks are a little darker because of the texture that you're adding. So it adds a little nicer to that. But again, don't get too overwhelmed with it. This is just supposed to sort of start or be the basic type of tree, so you don't have to get too detailed. And another way of doing it is the opposite. So I'm going to do the multi-stemmed a little differently. Here I'm going to come in and I'm just going to add a little hatching, sort of a little just cross hatching to the bottom of these canopies. And so I'm just going to do something kind of like this, just to add a little bit of shade to the bottom of the canopies that I drew. So hatch marks are just parallel lines drawn pretty quickly and closely spaced together for the purposes of adding shade. They don't all have to be the same length or uniform, but you could see how quickly that adds a little bit of three-dimensionality to the canopy. Adds just a little bit of texture, which is kind of nice. Okay, just finish it up. Okay, and there you have it. Again, two standard ways of drawing different trees, but basically the same procedure. The next one I'm going to do is conifer. So, we haven't done a conifer yet, so let's try and do a conifer. Typically when I tell my students that we're going to do conifers, it's kind of the opposite. We're going to start from the top versus the bottom, and we're kind of just going to work our way around the canopy in the typical pyramidal form that you would often see from a conifer. So for this, I like to think of being like a conductor of an orchestra. You're going to constantly do that little metric to ensure that your instruments are staying in line. And that's the same technique, that back and forth, that we're going to do for the conifer. So we're going to start here up top. And with time, you're going to be able to do this a little better, or you're going to be able to eyeball this a little more. But you just try and follow along how I'm doing it. And so I'm coming in and out, and in and out, like that. So going in and out, in and out. I'm going to get wider as we go, and then I'm going to come back a little bit, and then I'm going to end. Okay, so in and out, in and out, in and out. This shape, or this technique for conifers, is the same exact technique you could do for almost all different types of conifers, but it's going to change based on the form of the conifer. So something like a blue Atlas cedar, which is much more of a columnar or fastigiate type of variety, is going to look a lot different than something like a mugo pine, where it's much more squatter and fatter, but the same texture technique that we're doing can be held true. Just the overall form of the tree or the canopy is going to be different. Okay. Pen seems to be giving me a little bit of trouble, like it wants to run out of ink or something, but we're going to push it through. Okay. Here we go. And so now I'm kind of at the widest point, and I'm going to be coming back to center, or narrowing it just a little bit before I end here. And again, it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. Again, look at an actual real coniferous tree out in your yard or out in the landscape. Very rarely is it perfectly symmetrical. And so don't feel bad if yours isn't perfectly symmetrical. You want it to be natural. You want it to make it look as if it's a real, true plant. Okay? And we're just going to end there with that one. Okay? And we're going to add a little trunk to it. And then we're going to come back, and you could leave it like this if you wanted to, but we'll come back and we're going to add, I'm going to grab my lighter line weight, and I'm going to add branches, okay? And these I'm going to make sure that I texture just a little bit darker, okay? So every now and then you're going to have your trunk or your branches pop out. Okay. Like so. Maybe I do it like that. Okay. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to add a little more detail right here. And there we have it. Now we have a regular conifer for our landscape design purposes. And so now we have, with a regular contour style, just focusing on the edges first, or the canopy, regular basic ornamental, multi-stemmed, and a coniferous. So if I had to do one more just for this intro tutorial, I have some space to do so, what we're going to do is we're going to just do a weeping variety of ornamental deciduous tree. So let's see how that is. I'm gonna see if my, I'm gonna grab, just because my other pen was running out of ink, I'm gonna grab my 0.8 versus my 1. So it's gonna be just about the same thickness. Okay, we're gonna start the same way that we did with the ornamental starting one. So we're gonna just practice that again. So we're gonna have one trunk coming up, and then it's gonna split. Actually, yeah. Oh, that's bad. That's all right. We'll make it work. Okay. Okay, I'm going to have maybe another one right there. And then do another one right there. And it's just going to come and sort of get thinner as we go up. It's going to die back like that. Okay. All right, we're going to see how that works. The trunk kind of got a little wonky on me, but we'll see. Hopefully that makes it look okay still. So this time, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same kind of style that we did over here, but instead we're going to make these edges, these canopies, really come down, kind of like they're drooping or like they're melting down the canopy. Okay, so I'm going to start over here with this one. We really want to make it look like it's drooping like that. Okay, that's going to give us much more of that type of weeping effect. Okay, and same thing with all of them. They're going to come down, and you can have some come really heavily down, some just do a little bit, but it's like almost they're melting off the branches, like so. This is going to be the one that gives me the most trouble, so let's spend a little time on that, doing that. Let's see if we can hide some of my mistakes by doing it this way. I think I did an okay job hiding that. And you end up making mistakes even if you've done this for quite some time. So just don't be afraid of doing it. You got to sort of try and make the best out of it. Use them to your advantage. Okay, and then we work our way up. Another one. This is going to weep down a little bit too. And this last one, really going to see it just at the very top. We're going to give this one a nice long weep. Okay. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of weeping in the back, just some forms, so it looks like there's some weeping parts in the back of it. And so then I have just a standard, this is probably just more of a younger tree that's a weeping variety. And I could add the same type of texture that I did before to these two. This time I'm going to do it just to the interior, so I'm going to grab my 0.5, I'm going to do it to the canopy here. And so I'm going to come back and add it to the edge of the canopy. I'm going to go a little darker here so you guys can see it a little more depth. And just work our way through the canopy, take our time. All right, and there you have it. I have just a standard weeping variety. Add a little texture around it. There we go. Add a little texture around this guy. So I have my standard. Let me see if I can line this up on the video a little better. Okay, so I have my regular ornamental here. I have my multi-stem. I have my conifer. And I have my weeping. All with a standard contour style with various levels of complexity. And you could practice these time and time again to really get them to the where you want your technique to be. Okay? So hopefully this was really valuable. Practice these a number of times, you'll get the hang of it, and it's a really useful technique for landscape sketching. Okay? I'll see you at the next video.